Alright, the next thing I'm going to go over are pilots. There are three types of pilots: regular pilots, legendary pilots, and gunslingers. You can only assign one pilot to any mech, and only post Age of Destruction mechs can have pilots. So regular pilots are fresh out of school, newbie, green pilots. They haven't seen much action. All the merits that they've earned have been through combat simulation, maybe a few small skirmishes through controlled settings, or through textbooks. But and they usually don't have outstanding merits compared to legendary or gunslinger pilots. Sometimes regular pilots are tied to a faction where they can only where they can only pilot a mech of a certain faction, or sometimes you can put them in or whatever mech, whatever faction mech you want. All regular pilots though have a certain class that they're limited to. So only some of them can go in light mechs, only some of them can pilot medium mechs. Legendary pilots are the main story characters. They're the princes, they're the first, the lieutenants, the commanders, the generals of the armies. They're always tied to a faction. Okay? And these are the guys that have these are one of two cards that have portraits on them. The regular pilots usually have either like the name of the school they went to, or like a medal, an insignia or something. So legendary pilots have the portrait of the person. They're always tied to a faction. All right, yeah. Gunslingers. Gunslingers, again, they have the portrait of the person. They are mercenaries. They aren't tied to any faction. They can be put into any faction mech usually, but in order to do that, they must be recruited into a mech. Or they could just be put into any other mercenary mech that doesn't have a faction symbol associated with it for free. But they do usually have a weight class restriction. There are a few gunslinger pilots that can go into any weight class, and there's special rules for that. Legendary and gunslinger pilots have a few things that regular pilots don't. Legendary and gunslinger pilots have preferred mechs, and what that is that they have their own special, unique mech which they work best in. For, let's say, the pilot Julian Davian, he's a legendary pilot. He has his special mech called Damocles, which is an Enforcer 3. You may let Julian pilot his special mech for a alternative point cost. You can also let Davion pilot any other mech. I think, but Julian Davion does have a restriction that he can only pilot Davion mechs or Swordsworn mechs. But regardless, that's not the point. But you can, if you wanted to, you can let him pilot Davion Osiris, or you could let him pilot his preferred mech. If you let him pilot his preferred mech, he gets his special ability, which is listed on his card. Same goes with gunslingers. You can let them pilot some random mech, or you can let them pilot their preferred mech. And if they do pilot their preferred mech, they get their special ability. Piloting a preferred mech usually costs more. I think it actually always does. It always costs more. So I think that's, yeah. So you can only use the special ability when in a preferred mech. But if you don't go into the preferred mech, you still get the modifiers that the pilot gives to your mech. Pilots can give 3 different types of modifiers, or combinations of them. They can modify your speed value, your attack value, and your defensive value. All right. So I think that's about it. If you want, that's about it on pilots. Here's some tips. I really didn't think of many. The only thing I'd really think of was when using pilots, use the pilot stat modifiers to help increase your mech's shortcomings. If you have a mech with only 9 attack, you might want to try to find a pilot that has +2 attack, so you can increase it to like 11, which is a pretty good attack. If you have a mech with weak defense, try to find a pilot that has, that has a defense modifier to it. Also, one thing that I've noticed that's not really a tip, but it's just something you might want to keep in mind. The 3 different modifiers have a certain value with them, right? Or I don't know exactly how to word this. Basically, if you're going to attack modifiers cost more than defense modifiers, which cost more than speed modifiers. So let's say we have 3 pilots. One pilot that only increases your attack by 1, one pilot that only increases your defense by 1, and one pilot that only increases your speed by 1. The pilot that increases your attack is going to cost more than the pilot that increases your defense, which is going to cost more than the pilot that increases your speed. You understand what I'm saying? So if you're looking for a pilot that is going to increase your attack, expect to pay more than if you were looking for a pilot to increase your defense or speed. That's basically the point I'm making. It's just something that comes along. I'm not sure whether they just kind of make up the things, or if they're using a mathematical formula with them. I don't know. I'm sure they are. Regardless, that's really it on pilots. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Probably maybe terrain or something, or maybe do actually get into some rules like movement. Yeah, I don't think I missed anything. Yeah. Maybe I should just say that the recruiting. Oh my god. Recruiting pilots, like gunslingers. They'll have a thing on the bottom that says recruitment cost, which is their base recruiting cost. So if you wanted to recruit a gunslinger to a faction like Ghost Bear, and it said recruit cost 5, then you'd pay an extra 5 points to put him into that Ghost Bear mech. Sometimes they have alternative costs where, like, if you wanted to recruit them to a certain faction, that certain faction costs more or less. I guess that, whether or not that pilot has had good relations or bad relations with that certain faction. And sometimes they can't even be recruited to a faction. Sometimes you'll see a faction symbol with a slash through it, which means you can't recruit it to them. But for the most part, you can recruit gunslingers to any faction. Legendary are always tied to a faction, and regulars can be tied to a faction or cannot be tied to a faction. Okay, so there you go. That's it. Hopefully I wasn't rambling too much. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.